Hi everyone, I have today a friend of mine who is Trevor Grassi, an independent researcher in Egyptology. Trevor, welcome. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much. It's been a long time waiting to do this. I'm really
I
excited
know.
to talk with you finally. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we were planning to do that for a while, and then things happened. And
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you were so busy. So before getting into the busy part, I'd like to you to explain to my audience what motivated you in your life to become independent researcher in Egyptology. What inspired you? What is your journey to this point today?
Well, this had I guess it starts when I was about 18 and I had a lot of philosophical questions. I was getting into philosophy and stuff, thinking about the world, what's wrong with it, that kind of thing. Um, but basically when I was 18, I ended up meeting John Anthony West, who was he was the man who completely rewrote history, basically, and the origins of civilization. Sorry, one second. So, I was graduating high school, and all my guidance counselors and stuff were telling me I have to go, do something reasonable. And I basically met him, and I realized his official title was a rogue Egyptologist, and that really resonated with me. That that title, when I'm being told I should go, do something normal. Something clicked, and I ended up becoming very close with John and his whole family for the following 12 years until he passed in 2018. So, yeah, it's hard to quickly summarize who he was or what he did, but he was basically gave us this entire understanding that the Sphinx is way older than we thought based on water weathering and bringing in Dr. Robert Schoch. Um, and basically, his book Serpent in the Sky, it goes very deep into the uh, deep levels of esoteric symbolism. So I kind of describe it like it's the foundation you need to start studying Egyptology. Um, and basically, yeah, from there, I ended up just realizing he was a genius. And I was like, I want to learn everything I can from you. I was asking him questions. I was in his library for like 12 years straight. I realized he had something that no one else had. So that really gave me the first impulse into it. But it was also in the early 90s they discovered when they were looking at the water weathering on the Sphinx, the subsurface weathering and doing seismic surveys, they discovered this chamber under the Sphinx's left paw, which it led me back then. I didn't know about Edgar Cayce and all this back in 2000 2006. So I ended up learning about all that stuff very quickly because Edgar Cayce, who I know you're familiar with and probably your audience is, was an amazing psychic, gifted, very accurate, very verified and validated. And he's talking about this age of a golden age in the distant past where this cataclysm that happened to Atlantis, it ended up wiping out this advanced civilization, and they buried all their secret knowledge under Giza, basically. Um, and he said specifically that there's a chamber under the Sphinx's paws that leads to this hall of knowledge and records. So that's where it really all started for me. I realized this wasn't a hoax, this wasn't a myth, this wasn't just made up. I started researching. I realized this archive under Giza is really a real thing. So from there, yeah, I ended up meeting all these people through John, Graham Hancock, Robert Schoch, Laird Scranton. He inspired all these people, Robert Bavall, Thomas Brophy, a whole host of people that I might just show in a second, a couple books that I could share that some of the things that furthered me along that path. Um, or I could show a couple of them right now, even might be easy,
Yes,
but
please do.
okay. I just got a random stack here, but this one's called the Origin Map. This one is completely mind-blowing. This shows a megalithic site. It's an astrophysicist, Dr. Thomas Brophy. He's showing a megalithic site in southern Egypt. And if you see these two different pictures, um, this is showing two different alignments to the stars in the precessional cycle that happened 13,000 years apart, basically. When this lines up, this one's not going to line up for 13,000 years. And one of them hasn't aligned for since 16,500 BC. So this is the kind of thing that throws a monkey wrench in the whole timeline. Um, and John wrote the afterword, and Robert Schoch wrote the foreword. There's some newer ones too, but classic is Dr. Schoch, um, Voyages of the Pyramid Builders, and then this one as well, Origins of the Sphinx. This is some of the stuff. Schoch started defending this entire hypothesis of the erosion on the Sphinx, proving that it was far older, which I'm not going to get too deep into, but people can also see that I did some interviews with Danny Henderson, and covered a lot of that material there. If people want to look at the opening the Hall of Records, that has a lot of that information. Um, and then there's a few Lost Star of Myth and Time. This is one that gets into the precessional cycle, which is some of this most advanced knowledge that was encoded into these myths and art and architecture of a lot of the most advanced civilizations that seem to have this knowledge from the prehistory, from Atlantis. This is another one about that, Earth Under Fire, Paul Violette. I'll just throw all these up quick so people can look them up later. Or the Atlantis Blueprint. This is Colin Wilson and Rand Flemeth. Another one about Earth changes and this idea that some cataclysm really wiped a bunch of that out. And this is another on that subject, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings by Charles Hapgood. So this is a handful of them. I've got a few other books here. Maybe I'll show later on too because they're related, but that's a couple examples of some of the people that John started turning me on to that were, it was like when I could ask him questions about this, I'd be like, John, what's the best book about 2012 or something? In 2008, around then, I was asking him that. And for instance, he sent me to this book called Maya Cosmogenesis 2012 from John Major Jenkins, who's also passed a few years ago. But I got to correspond with him a little bit. He was absolutely the guy who knew more than anyone else on the subject. So with one question, I'm sent to the best book on the topic. I'm sent to the best researcher to answer these questions. So it was like John was cutting me through this sea of just nonsense that would have taken me lifetimes to read all this stuff and find the actual real people that were challenging the whole theory of the whole narrative of the timeline of the origin of civilizations, which is still being pushed basically through academics, and any alternative to it has really been sidelined and censored, and you know, it's faced a lot of opposition, like John did when they found this chamber that Edgar Casey predicted, and then they weren't able to do more work there or actually get down into that chamber. So much like Schoch and John, I wanted to see what's in that chamber under the Sphinx's front paws for quite some time. And if you do the math, that's 2006. I'm 37 now. This is over half my life. I've been looking for the Hall of Records, basically. So in the past couple of years, everything has just started to really heat up on that because as far as your book, The Cedars coming out, that was a big one. My friend Manu Seyfzadeh, he recently released a book a few years ago. It's called Under the Sphinx. That is a critically important book. So some of this stuff is suddenly coming forward now that's making my past 20 years of working on this suddenly very relevant. And yeah, in the past 2 weeks, especially, as we can get into towards the end, my friends in Italy have just released some pretty amazing discoveries under the pyramids. So that's a hot topic, highly debated, contested, controversial. Maybe I can answer some questions about that today as well. Um, I would say just on that quick is that I basically confirmed with Armando May recently that he's willing to do an interview with me on the 12th in English, and they have not given any English interviews at all so far. They've been trying to respond to questions in Italian because they're more comfortable in that language, but he basically said he'd like to get questions sent to him ahead of time so he can look at them and be able to respond, accurately and make sure he's saying the right things. But it sounds like they're going to let me record an interview with maybe even with Filippo, who's the guy who innovated this new synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography technology, which is what has allowed them to actually scan under the pyramids now, and what people have a lot of questions about because it's a new innovation on something that's been around for a while, but this is what's allowing us to now see slices of the Giza Plateau that go 2 kilometers deep, which is far beyond anything we've had as far as technology, non-invasive. It's a real breakthrough. So things are now heating up after the past 2 decades of working up to this. So yeah, it's
And
very
before we are coming to this very specific research from the Italian team, and you you didn't only study through books. You went to Egypt. You even went there many times. When was the first time you went to Giza? And what was your feeling? What did you feel? What was in your consciousness at that moment when you stepped
mm.
on that plateau?
um it took me a long time because it's not cheap, and the first time I went I wanted to go on a tour. I wanted to go with John. He had what was called the Magical Egypt tours, which were without a doubt number one, the top tour anyone on earth wanted to get on because he was the master. Everyone knew, nobody knew Egypt better than John. So they were very coveted trips, but I didn't have a lot of money. I was trying every single year to save up enough to get on one of those tours. But I was traveling, I was a musician, an artist, and just certainly not the kind of person who had some money like that sitting around. And to do a full two week tour of Egypt and really see everything, it's like a minimum price of 6 grand or something plus airfare to Cairo and back. And it's not easy to get that kind of money together. So it took me a long time. And sadly, but also fortunately in another way, the moment when I finally got enough money to go, John died that year, and that was 2018. He got sick for that year and just missed it basically. And at his memorial that they held at his family's property, that was when I first met Dr. Shock. And because John couldn't give tours anymore, Shock kind of stepped up and said, "All right, everyone who missed that opportunity, you can come with me this year." And so he did a tour in 2019 that sold out immediately. So he did a second one immediately after it, and that sold out immediately. And then he doubled the capacity of the second trip, and that sold out immediately. And someone canceled on that one, and I ended up getting the last seat to go with Dr. Shock. So this was 2019, and that was the first time I got to go to Egypt. It was with Dr. Robert Schoch, his wife Catherine Ulysses, who also helped him with rewriting and revising one of his most important books, Forgotten Civilization. And it was with a team called Oracle, which is it's kind of a partial anagram of or a acronym of um, Organization for the Research of Ancient Cultures. And so there's a couple other people that were in this organization that was kind of based on what he and John had been working on before. And he's kind of since Shock has since set up this entire branch of Boston University where he's a professor, and he's now the director of the Institute for the Study of Ancient Cultures or something like that, ISOC, I think. So he's basically the only one who's really pulling this whole idea of an ancestral civilization, leaving a legacy behind for these other cultures into the realm of academia itself and actually getting it, which is the fight that's been going on this whole time. there's been a firewall here where the academics, or John called them the quackademics, not all of them, he recognized there were great people, but there are some that are just ferociously attacking any kind of Graham Hancockian alternative view of history whatsoever. And so I've called it the war for archaeology, or the archaeology wars, because yeah, it's like a firewall. It's like these alternative researchers, everyone wants to see their peer-reviewed papers, but nobody in the academies will allow those papers to be peer-reviewed. So it's like a chicken and egg, like when are you guys gonna wake up and let us prove to the academics and let them actually study this stuff that's very obviously proving, that they're still telling us, these cultures on the Eastern Hemisphere and Western Hemisphere, they both just came up with this idea for pyramids themselves. They both just came up with this idea for, like, manipulating the density of stones somehow to turn them into marshmallows and squeeze them against each other like corn kernels. And this technology that's very clearly advanced in a way where our own technology of today has barely caught up. And all of these, esoteric symbols that ended up turning into these hieroglyphic writing systems, both sides of the world, and they're still telling us no one crossed the ocean until Columbus. And it's like, come on, come on, at this point, stop with that. It's just so ridiculous. But they're still not allowing any kind of you don't have to call it Atlantis. They hate Atlantis. John would call it the A word. It's like saying a profanity or something. If you're talking to academics, they're going to turn right off if you mention Atlantis or aliens or anything extraterrestrial. So there's just been this blockage, and yeah, I think at this point, a lot of people are seeing that these alternative researchers have really come up with a lot of holes in this timeline that's being pushed by the mainstream narrative that needs to be corrected. And history and civilization as we know it did not begin 5,000 years ago. Um, as yeah, as you've talked about it as well in the Cedars, when you get into the Anunnaki and the King's List and stuff, we're talking about much larger periods of time. And even in the scientific world, they're talking about 200 to even 300,000 years. Humans haven't physiologically changed at all. So we've been the same for 300,000 years. Our brains haven't increased, but we just never thought to start a civilization until 5,000 years ago. It doesn't make sense.
No,
It
it
doesn't.
doesn't.
So all these flaws in the official story are coming forward to a point where it's like people like Graham Hancock now have to go to Netflix to present his information, and then he's got the Society of American Archaeologists devoting like half their yearly publication to warning their students how dangerous it is to even read Graham Hancock. And it's like, when are we going to grow up? When can we just talk about this? When can this be in the universities? Because it's obvious we were wrong about it. The the
Well,
mainstream view of it was wrong.
yeah, but we all know now because people start to wake up. Who owns the mainstream media and the academia?
Yeah. Yeah.
Unfortunately, who is behind controlling the information,
Yeah.
controlling exactly what they're going to serve to people, to maintain people in a state of ignorance. But
Mhm.
now, as the world awakens, and independent researchers like you, like many others, are just pushing it forward and using alternative media, and it's happening. That's the only way we can get around
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. And I guess I kind of went on a tangent there. You were asking what it was like when I first got there.
Yeah.
I'll answer that now. It was like when I mean, these were the best 2 weeks of my life. Getting to spend 2 weeks with Dr. Shock, who is such an objective scientist. He's the reason that the whole world took this water weathering seriously. John had to convince him to look at the Sphinx because all these Egyptologists and archaeologists back then, they were talking 92, 93, they were all, calling John crazy, even though he's pointing to this thing that's right in front of everyone's eyes, very clearly water-induced, precipitation-induced heavy weathering on the Sphinx and its enclosure. So he needed the PhDs of Robert as a geologist and geophysicist to bring this to the geologic panel in America. So Robert was already a hero of mine. What he had done to support John to actually bring this into the realm of scientific study, it was really amazing to spend this couple weeks with him and that be my first exposure to Egypt, which I do recommend if you're going to go your first time. If you can save up the money and go with a researcher, you're going to support that researcher, and you're also going to be able to see all the temples, all the pyramids, without worrying about where you're going to sleep at night or if they speak English or how to pay for things or transportation. It's really worth it to do a tour if you can, at least for your first time, I say, because I've been back 3 times since then, and it was always as just solo, being able to travel wherever I want. Um, but for your first time, it's really great to just not have to worry about any of that and just enjoy the energy of the temples as you go there. Um, so when I first touched down, my plane hit the ground, Cairo airport, and there was a feeling that moment that was like, I'm home. That's what it felt like. It was just like, I know I've been here longer than however many, I'm doing this Western American incarnation right now, but this is where I am supposed to be. And then there, there are these other things about Egypt when you are actually immersing yourself in the culture. You eat the food, and the food just, then you remember the food. I've been speaking about how I believe Egypt is actually a bridge through time, essentially. And especially if you were someone who was actually initiated into these mysteries in ancient times, it does something to your soul that actually allows it to remember that in future incarnations. It advances you to a point where there is something, your memory is always wiped when you're born into a new lifetime. But especially if you had some, multiple lives or whatever, studying these mysteries back then, that's the whole aim of it, is to develop your soul further and to a point where you can actually retain your soul's skills, memories, consciousness from past lives. And I call it a bridge through time because it's something like if you see a statue that was there thousands of years ago and you remember seeing it in that incarnation, then you go back to Egypt and you see the same thing again, it's going to trigger that memory back to you, and you're going to remember that you're a soul, not a flesh, bag of blood, basically. You're more than that. And I think that's really part of the main reason for Egypt. The primary function of it is to teach you what you are as a soul rather than just a mere mortal. And show you like what it is you are outside your body, you know, how much more of a potential you really have besides this idea that whatever you're gonna, just go get married, have kids, start a family, get into lots of debt, and then die later. There's more to it than that. It's like there's
Absolutely.
something beyond this world and something, you're training for this journey into the duat, the afterlife, in a way where you actually have a motivation to be a good person, to have morals and standards, and you don't want to show up at that realm and have Anubis weigh your heart against a feather, and your heart weighs more than that feather. You're just going to get sent back into the obstacle course again. You're going to be sent back through the same lessons if you haven't learned how to treat everyone around you right. So there's a part of this entire cosmology and um, conception of the soul is actually creating a motivation for even the pharaohs and the rulers to be just and treat everyone, as opposed to what you look at today, where we have basically the opposite. You have a system in which corruption is rewarded with riches and fame, and it's exactly the opposite. We're encouraged not to believe in reincarnation and to assume that we can trash this planet and who cares because we're not coming back. And all of this has been removed from the ancient wisdom that told us, no, you're still going to be here. You got to deal with the trash pile. You're leaving, it's bad enough not caring about the future generations. But there was something within the Egyptian way of thinking that's uniting everything together in terms of astronomy, art, music, healing, and even politics and how you maintain a civilization that's not a trash heap like ours is, that hasn't degraded down to this. And so I think a big part of what Egypt really is about teaching people there is something greater that humanity is designed to be. Like we're in a caterpillar stage, but we're supposed to be butterflies, basically. There's something more that we can achieve, higher faculties we can open up within ourselves. And so it's really got these lessons about how to activate the chakras, how to open the third eye, how to basically bring forward your own inner genius and your own highest potential and achieve it, which is something that's just, it's not something people even know exists in the world today. They're told to just be distracted by this and that and, get into these divisive political engagements with others. And there's something else about it. But yeah, I was going to actually maybe ask if I remember you telling a story that you had one time that was about um, triggering an ancient memory that was about a jar you found. Would you tell that story where you found a smell? Do you know what I mean?
Oh, when I was in Egypt, when I worked
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
hearing this and I wanted to ask you about that because that's one of the most beautiful stories I've ever heard.
Oh, it's still emotional for me, you know. I was working in the Temple of Karnak in Luxor,
Okay.
and we had excavated the area of the dwellings of the priests
Mm,
near the enclosure wall, and one of the houses that had collapsed due to a fire. We found the bathroom of the guy with different pots with steel perfumes and balms in a sealed alabaster pots.
mm,
So we put everything straight away in plastic bags. So it was in the mud, preserved for all this time, and then put in plastic bags. So nothing was altered in the transit, and the plastic bags were put in Tupperwares in the storage rooms. So still concealed very quickly. And then I went there with two colleagues to take measurements and document what we had found. There was this alabaster pot. It was like that, and the
mm.
lid was still there, and I had to remove the lid to take measurements. So I didn't know if there was something in it, probably. So I slightly cleaned everything with the scalpel and the brush, and then slowly managed to remove the lid. And at the moment I removed the lid, there was perfume in it. The molecules of perfume that hadn't been touched for 3,000 years, even more, it was more ancient than that. Suddenly they escaped. But when they were released, my face was in the way because I was like this. And it went through me, it went in my nose, and I smelled this perfume. And then the molecules went through my body and through the air. And oh my gosh, and I smelled the pot, it was gone. It has just escaped it. And
Yeah.
I had this feeling to just be the privileged one to smell this ancient perfume until it disappeared forever, ever, gone. That's it.
Yeah.
So I felt at this moment a taste of eternity, of being a bridge. It was such a beautiful moment. But when I was a student in Paris doing my archaeology studies, I had a part-time job in a perfumery. And I had learned how to recognize the different elements in a perfume. That, there's never anything for nothing in life.
Yeah.
So I could totally identify all the flowers, but I wasn't sure. So I went straight away at night while it was still clear in my mind to the souk in Luxor. And there was all these perfume sellers with Egyptian oils. And I could really identify the same ingredients. And now I could write a little paper on it and tell exactly what was in it. That was the most beautiful experience I have ever had uh,
That's
regarding this.
amazing.
bridging, experience. Yeah.
It's exactly what I'm talking about, and it's such an awesome example of it. So did you find all the oils they combined to make that
Yeah.
one? Did you
Yeah. Yeah.
reproduce it? Oh, that's
Yes.
awesome.
So yeah. So I bought different oils, the different oils, and I made it. I still have it, the bottle there, here.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
another really important part of
Yeah.
the oils, the essential oils they make. And I know some of the people who make some of the best ones, because a lot of people they'll dilute it down and stuff. And but the people, this is an ancient tradition. You can go on the walls of Karnak, actually. I'm pretty sure it's Karnak, is where they have the entire list of these sacred oils, what each one, there's one for each of the seven chakras, so you can get the full set of the seven chakra oils. And this is part of, it's not just perfume.
Mhm.
It can be diffused as incense. It can be incense for the room. It can be used as a perfume. You can just put a dot on each chakra related to the whichever oil it is. They each have a specific. Or you can also, I mean, some of them are just medicinal. It's all medicinal, if you want to say that, but it's healing, but it's also to do with activating the subtle body, the chakras and the energy currents flowing through your body. So these smells actually have a physiological effect on you. They make you smell better. They are perfume as
Yeah.
well. And this incense, when you're diffusing it with a candle in one of these little glass diffusers, it's going to make your room smell like it's an ancient Egyptian temple. And I know, my friends who really do it right, they bury the oil at their secret spot at the pyramids. They'll bury it for like a few months under the sand and let it absorb some of this energy from the pyramids themselves. And the oils are an ancient tradition. Like I said, at Karnak on the wall, you can see each of the seven chakra oils that goes to each one. Um, and yeah, I think that's one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard about the triggering of memories and connecting through time to something. Because I'm sure you were, I wouldn't be surprised if you put that perfume there yourself or something. Some of this stuff that I'm working with now is with my friend William Brown. He's doing stuff where it's like he's going back to clear his own soul from different, tombs or things, like connecting to karma that's been left behind from past lives. And um so many people, I don't know, at least 100 different people at this point have come to me in confidence saying like, I don't know who to tell this to, but I had a dream, I had an out-of-body experience, I had a vision. I was under the pyramids, I was flying over the pyramids, I was under the Sphinx, I saw these tunnels, I was a priest of the Sphinx, I was a priest of Karnak or priestess. And people just come to me like I'm gonna understand, and I do, and I try not to too quickly just be like, okay, you're not alone, trust me, or not let them understand that it is very special that they had that experience. But everyone sees what I'm saying about Egypt, and they know that they can tell me this stuff. So the confirmations of these kind of things, I mean, all of them are telling me the same stuff. They're describing the same kind of chambers and stuff below Giza. They're telling me, I remember being initiated and understanding all this knowledge. I was working on the energy stuff. I was working on the crystals. I was doing this or that. And so I actually have a whole picture of Egypt just from personal experiences from past lives coming at me, where, every time I'm like, first of all, you're not crazy. Second, you're not alone. Third, this is how it works. You were there and it's real. You're not coming up with these dreams for no reason. So I'm seeing it really, truly amazing. And when you see that many references that are all telling you the same things, um, that kind of that kind of almost makes me want to show a couple more of these books actually for a second. Because
Please.
okay, I think some of these things actually can, I don't know, if people read some of these books too, it might help them trigger their own memories. But um, first of all, there's this one,
Ah,
and I think
I know this
everyone
one.
knows about this one on this channel, but you can see I've got a bunch of like bookmarks in this. And look, I got you and Michael Sala both signed this. That was epic.
Oh,
When I didn't have this was like right when it came out, and I first met you in 2020. two.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, one dude had an extra copy he got online. He sold it to me at the conference. I was able to get it signed and everything.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, especially this whole middle section right here. This is something I've been telling everyone to read because your experience working in Karnak and working at Giza and the things that you learned about the Sphinx, that is in no other book ever written in history. And yeah, I will thank you for that again and just put that as the first one. But yeah, if we have time in the future, I would love to do another episode and just talk about a lot of that stuff in there. It
Yes,
might
yes,
be
we
too
will do
much.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be amazing because I have a lot of questions about your work that you were doing there. 8 years you were there?
8 years. 8 years in Karnak plus 1 year before doing several missions, so I'd say 9 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and you definitely had some experiences in that time.
I did. And with all the psychometry I'm naturally doing, it was very hard, so many times very hard to just shut up because if I would have said, oh, I'm seeing and I'm feeling, and I would have been fired because, CNRS, National Center for Scientific Research, it was like serious stuff. And so you're not talking about psychometry at all. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay. But
Mhm.
talking about shortly my experience when I was taken in 1991 under the Sphinx of Giza by the front door, I mean, in between the paws, but effectively there's an entrance. It's under we say under the left paw because the staircase goes that way.
Mhm.
The stela of the dream is blocking the entrance. That's why the stela was put there.
Yeah.
That's what I knew because where I was at just behind the stela and going under. So what was interesting is something at the time in 1991, and that I think that can bring many answers. Why now we are discovering all these things? In 1991, I was with Thorhan, who is my ET friend. He took me there and he said, we have to shift density to get into these undergrounds under the Sphinx. I said, why? He said, because what has been hidden there underneath has been put in a higher density of vibration that when humanity is ready intellectually and consciously to decode this technology and to use it and it's safe, then they will be on the same physical level as these technologies and they will be able to find them. At the time, in 1991, the whole planet and star system was in a lower frequency. But now we have entered the fifth density and we are adjusting. So now it is time we have contact with all the ETs that are in fifth density and we have access to all this technology that has been there but in a parallel frequency. And now because we have arrived in this frequency now, we can physically access it because we have shifted, you know? And that I
Yeah.
think that's the reason why. Because at the time I couldn't understand
Mm.
why, when will humans be able to shift? What is this story? I don't get
Yeah.
it. Now I get it so well, you know?
Yeah.
So
Well,
what do you
that's what
think about
Casey
that?
said. I mean, that's what Casey said too. He's like, humanity is about to open the records that are under the Sphinx and near that area, but not until certain changes have come about within humanity as a whole and the whole morphogenic field. It's about the collective consciousness reaching a certain state, and when certain individuals bring forward triggering memories and decryptions of these codes, then the whole rest of humanity, or certain portions of it at least, will reach this higher stage where humanity might be trusted with some of the actual technology that could be planet destroying technologies if it comes out to the Kali Yuga minds and to the deep state that are, dying to get their hands on this kind of stuff and can't because of these protections. And like you say, yeah, these other these other densities or levels of reality that we don't normally perceive in the 3D or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, that's a great way to actually keep out the people of a lower intelligence, lower frequency, lower consciousness or motivation from being able to get into that. And there are many protections put in place to ensure that, as you know, um, including standing waves of energy in these places that will make you very sick and very, if you're not of the right um, genetics or soul key or just general level of consciousness, whatever it might be, you're going to get sick, get these headaches, and yeah, even hallucinate in some circumstances. And this is some things that we've really encountered ourselves. We know these things are real. We, had teams of workers had to be replaced over and over as they're getting close to some of these doors we're looking at and things like that. So there are definitely protections put in place by the highest minds this planet's ever seen, who knew exactly what kind of minds would be after this stuff at this time. And yeah, for instance, you mentioned in your book Hitler being there at the Sphinx, trying to get into this
Yeah,
record hall,
yeah,
and that's one thing, for instance, that ties directly to what Bill and I are doing. William Brown is the friend who I've been working with the past couple of years, and it was like Bill's been working at Giza for over 20 years. He's on his like 80th trip now. He's basically part-time lives at Giza and yeah, one of the things he did was he purchased this horse stable in 2009 and 10 and nobody knew what what was actually under this thing, but his wife is a dowser and she would use a pendulum and dowsing rods to detect these energies and she located all these subtle energies and then he would come behind with the GPR equipment and find a chamber every single time. So this was, and it's not some woo-woo like this isn't magic here. The head of the Department of Archaeology at the Cairo University awarded her an award for having so many successes actually locating these subtle energies that led to chambers. And it was just they had such a success rate doing it that way. But she detected something very important underneath this horse stable that, nobody thought it was very important, but Bill understood there was something so important here. And he ended up buying it in 2010. And they do know, we know that there are two tombs below it right now. And those two tombs have three tunnels leading out from them. One is going east and two are going west. And they're going west, which means they're going straight to the Sphinx from roughly about 120 meters away from the Sphinx. So we have two tunnels heading straight for the Sphinx from this stable that we're working to try and be able to excavate right now. We're working on the permit and another location as well that is I won't would take too long, but to explain. But the stable itself, he ended up realizing the walls of this building when he first bought it, it's been demolished, and then he built the whole office there, and that's been demolished too. And the whole village around it has been demolished at this point because they're doing all this work to clear that whole area further east and all the residential and hotels and little guest houses and stuff. They're all just getting destroyed since 2021. Um, so he's like the only person left who has a property that he still owns that is literally like 120 meters from the Sphinx. And this stable, he realized when he first bought it, the walls were like a meter thick, each one of them, which is it doesn't make sense for it to just be a horse stable. So he ended up realizing that it was a German bunker. He called it Hitler's bunker sometimes. The Nazis were trying to get in through this location to these two tombs below and get to the Sphinx from there. So this is part of the material I've been bringing forward in these new films. When I first saw what Bill was doing, and before all this even, he was doing these GPR scans across the whole plateau that no one has ever talked about. And his name wasn't on it. He actually had Dr. Ali Abbas lead the National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics, NRIAG, to carry out these GPR scans at 9 locations on the Giza Plateau. And like I said, his wife, who he met there, he had a whole life before, he had a whole family and all this stuff, and he had a sudden awakening and shift and recognized who he had been, and he was connected to these record halls in ancient times and was involved in helping put them there, really. And I believe everything he tells me about, he's got no ego in this, which is kind of the problem because he could have written 10 different bestsellers over the last 20 years. He could have been on, the feature of Ancient Aliens or whatever. He could have been a big, big name, but he did not care about that. He cared about putting all of his time and resources towards continuing this work. So when I saw that he had these GPR scans on the plateau, and his wife Lucina, who he met after this awakening, and they instantly were basically remembered past lives together and instantly just fell in love and basically got married within 6 months. And it's hilarious. She only speaks Polish and he only speaks English. It didn't matter. Still, they can barely even understand each other, but they have this connection. And so she came through. She's Polish, and she did all the dowsing on the plateau, found all these chambers, and Bill said, he got the funding together to get this project to scan it all. They got the permits, and every single one of the 9 locations was a hit. They found a cave or a tomb or a tunnel or a chamber at every single one. And somehow the world has never talked about these scans. So when I saw that first stuff, this was maybe 2020 or 21. I was like, how have I never seen this guy before, for one thing? And I realized he had so much just with those scans that I was already like, I don't know what's going on here, man, but you need support on the ground for one thing. You need help. You need somebody to make a movie about all of this or a book. Um, and he was just like, I don't know, I'm just doing my work, he's like, come meet me in Giza, make a film if you want. And I was like, I'm gonna do that. Okay, I'm gonna meet you there. And at this point, actually, this was, I think, late 2021. It was at the beginning of 2022 or 2023. It's a little foggy, but he was basically poised to get the permit at that point. And this trip, when he was going back, he was going to meet with even Hawass himself or some of the people. It was going to be going into the council of the ministry so they could evaluate the permit request. So it was very close to this. And he said, if this comes through right now, then we would have the right to actually go down into these tunnels, film everything we have access to from there, any of the tunnels they connect to. And I think you know as well as I, there's once you get into one of them, you might get into all of them
Yeah.
because it's a massive system, you know. So yeah, I'm thinking, okay, well, we've got 3 definite shots at getting into that whole system in this one location alone. And there's all this other stuff the year after. He found like another 10 different cave entrances right next to the stable on the other side, inside the wall of the plateau, that were definitely connected to his. And all of these are like, we're getting to like less than 100 meters from the Sphinx at this point. They're obviously connected to those chambers. Chambers you saw, chambers we know. Hawass admitted to you back then that this one in the tail, I think I want to talk about that a little bit at least, but just to say, like, there's a lot of things I've found that have validated the things you've talked about in your book as well. And this is part of it, saying, yeah, of course, that these occultists and dark groups like the Nazis and corrupt mystery schools have been attempting to penetrate into all these spaces to get that technology and that knowledge for themselves, of course, not to share with the world. Um, but there are these barriers to prevent that type of thing from happening. They've accessed certain things, maybe, certainly, but not the real, not the goods, not the stuff that's really preserved for us all,
Yes, and now
Um,
now that the world is becoming safer and all these institutions are in the midst of collapsing, uh, it coincides with the moment when these technologies are available because humanity is shifting to the same level of reality, you know. So this is absolutely well timed. It's incredible,
yeah.
incredible. So you've been physically under the Giza Plateau, Trevor. Tell us about the Tomb of the Birds.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's a structure in the northwest corner of the plateau, and I recently just made it inside of it. It was discovered and written about by Henry Salt and Giovanni Caviglia in 1817. They were one of the only people to ever mention it, besides Colonel Howard Weiss. And he didn't really say much about it, but he did say that all these mummies of birds and animals were found, much like Saqqara or Tuna Gebel. It was an animal cemetery.
Mhm.
So you had hawks and ibis and things like that, Thoth and Horus represented in these mummified birds, basically. So Andrew Collins ended up finding in 2008, he followed the leads from Salt and Caviglia's diary entries, which were only published like that year or the year before. So he ended up rediscovering the entrance to where it was, and he went in. I remember when he put out this video, and I was watching him with the footage going through this cave, like, what am I looking at? This is it. This is it. How Hawass denied that there were any caves there at all at first, at least, and then he realized there were caves, and he put a gate on the front of it, so it was locked. But he brought in his own film crew shortly after Andrew exposed it and wrote a book about it, under Beneath the Pyramids, which he's doing a, revised edition of now. But Hawass went in with his Chasing Mummies team for his TV show, and they filmed all the way to the back of the cave. It's the tomb structure is these 90-degree walls and this very, looks like it could be dynastic era even, but off the back of it, that's only maybe 35 meters long, as he said. Off the back, there's a cave system that it enters into, which I don't even know if the Tomb of the Birds was the original entrance to that cave system. We think there might have been entrances that went up from shafts, which are now um, buried in the basement of a building they just put there, the Khufu restaurant they put right on top of this thing.
No
So
coincidence.
no, when they put a building right on the plateau, they're covering an entrance,
Yeah,
period.
of
And
course.
there was a earlier building from Harvard, a Harvard building there that was further over a little bit, but I'd almost guarantee that's a much older building, but they must have been covering something up with that as well. There are all of these different entrances. It's called NC2 complex, which stands for the North Cliff 2. And if you look at the whole North Cliff, I mean, there's NC1 and then NC2, and then there's, I don't know, it looks like 10 more of them going down that backside of the cliff, which is nobody has ever talked about. But if you look on the satellite image, you can see all behind the restaurant and the Harvard building, there are many more entrances cut in there. And this is really interesting right now because my friend Richard Gabriel, he caught on to it as soon as Andrew mentioned it, and he went over there with his partner Judith. The two of them were on this intuitive path of discovering things. He's been working at Giza as long as Bill Brown, and they've been working together a lot. That's how I met him, was through Bill. After, I caught on that Bill was on something, and I met him there, then we instantly just were like, okay, we're in this, we're doing this. And now me and Bill and Richard are like a trio. We're talking every single day about, what's the next step? How do we get the Hall of Records? So Richard, he started going in there around 2008 as well. And he immediately, first time he saw it, it was not just like a great discovery. It was like his life. He understood that this cave system is his life. And so um, he started going in there a lot and finding ways to get in there, to research it, to bring nice lights down there, to get high resolution digital photography of every wall. He started seeing these murals all over the walls that were so heavily covered in bat poop and, dirt, and so difficult to discern, but he trained his eyes to start seeing these pictures. There's one wall where you can see the three pyramids. You can see a scene of the three pyramids. And this cave structure, it is without a doubt vastly predating, it's
Yeah.
pre-dynastic. I'll
Oh
tell you
yeah.
that. I'll say it's probably Zep Tepi. It's probably the first time, which is, some people would say, I think
Yes.
that's, around 12,500 BC, or when the first Atlantean immigrants were coming
Yes.
with all this knowledge.
That's it.
Of course, some people put it back even to like 30 or 36,000 BC, but the term Zep Tepi basically means the first time, the first age of Egypt and the origins of the culture there. So um, this cave was really important, and I understood that, and I decided for many years I'd wanted to get in there. And just in November, I had a feeling one day, and I just walked over there, and the gate was left open, and I walked right in. When the gate is open, you walk in.
Yeah,
I
I
think
know. I
I
know.
think you know
You
the
don't,
rule with that, you know.
I
If
know.
it's
You don't
open,
look around. You don't ask anyone. You just
no,
go. You go.
that's what you do. If the gate is open, you walk through it and you film it. And Andrew had gone, and Zahi had gone, and Richard had gone all the way. The cave system goes about 350 feet back from there, and then it hits this thing we call the tube tunnel. And the tube tunnel is this very narrow tube that goes out from the cave at that point. We'd had images or videos up to that point. Zahi sent a guy in there, and he came back out and just said, "Yep, it ends there." But that was a lie. It was not true. And we knew that. And we needed proof of that. So when I got in a few months ago, I crammed myself into that hole as deep as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And what happened was when they first put the gate up there, some of the first times when Andrew went in and when Richard went in, that it was not blocked off then. So when the gate got put up on the entrance of the Tomb of the Birds in the cave part, which is called the Cave of the Snake, because it's got this guardian called El Hanash, this enormous 30-foot snake who's a serpent guardian of this the halls of records, all this knowledge. And the earlier name for that being was Agatha Demon. And you can see this is a meaning like a good spirit, a good guardian that well, you know, you don't want to encounter this being if you're not worthy of the knowledge, but if you are, then you would be a friend to it. Or there's different legends about.
There are guardians. I met one of them, as I tell in my book.
Hmm.
Go on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I have one friend actually, Syed Badaway. He's grown up on the plateau his whole life, and he's a Bedouin. You know, has his experience. He told me straight up 3 times he met this snake, and it was a friend of his. He understood it to be a benevolent guardian, basically. So it's also meant to keep people afraid of it. And this cave, I've heard one of my other friends there has told me this cave system is called the cave of his fears because it's a fear test. You're meant to be challenged by fear and overcome it. And I'll tell you, it's a pretty good fear test. As I was crawling into this, there's cobras, there's camel spiders, there's bats everywhere, there's
Scorpions.
scorpions. Hmm. There's lack of oxygen. There's ammonia
Yeah.
from all this like bat poop and stuff. You're you are really tested, especially when you're asked to crawl through that tube tunnel. But
You did it?
basically, I had to get that shot from the end of it. So I crawled in and I proved that it's blocked off with dirt, and the dirt was put there from the opposite side. They put the dirt from inside, from past it, because there's ways you can tell. The way the dirt lies, it's not spilled in any of the area. They didn't carry it in from the way I came, where you'd see it all over the place. It was clearly tossed in like from a shovel from the opposite end. And that happened after the gate went up.
Yeah.
So this it was clearly blocked off from the other side. I believe the authorities have been into the parts past it. And the diary notes of Salt and Caviglia actually prove that they did go much further past there. And what they said was very interesting because the whole cave we know of, as I said, is 300 to 350 feet roughly. That's about 100 yards. And Salt explains, he says, we went several hundred yards into this cave. So they went already, that's saying another 300 yards maybe. Um, and then they reached, and he describes having to crawl on their hands and knees, which it very clearly means the tube tunnel. Because as far as what we can see there now, there's no other place where you have to actually crawl. So we know they went past that point, And we know they went several hundred yards past that point because he basically said it led to where it opened up into this spacious hall. And then he said that communicated to three other chambers of equal dimensions. So four spacious halls. And then he said from those other chambers issued forth a collection of labyrinthine passages leading out from there. Many labyrinthine passages is what he said. So many, it's at least three, he's
Yeah.
saying. Um, and then, not to mention, Richard actually found where the original passage it kind of stops suddenly, and you have to come over a little bit for the last section to get to the tube tunnel. Where the original passage ends, it's blocked up with a stone slab that's meant to look like bedrock, but there's mortar all around it. So
So,
we're calling it the invisible door. There's a fourth continuation from the original passage. So this is all stuff that Richard and I both just did a 4 hour exposure of this whole system. We exposed like the fact that when he exposed so much of this system months ago, he said Andrew had also released this TerraSAR X satellite imagery scanning the plateau that showed these two tunnels leading from NC2 straight over to the middle pyramid. So Andrew believed, and Richard and I both believe that the cave system from NC2 goes straight to the Khafre Pyramid, which is, I don't believe Khafre built it, but that's what they call it. I believe he renovated it, but it was older. But nevertheless, it's the middle pyramid, which we're now seeing these huge structures below. So this makes it extremely important, especially if we're saying that they have already been beyond the end of
yeah.
NC2 as we know it. That means there's a good chance the authorities have already accessed that structure under Khafre and seen it with their own eyes. If we're really following through to conclusion here, Hawass might have actually seen some of this stuff. Um, but
We, we are not naming everyone here, Egyptian side, but it's a common understanding from all those who have worked or been involved in work on the Giza Plateau that the Egyptian authorities have orders to hide whatever is under the plateau and to uh, block this knowledge, block the information, because they keep it for not so good institutions who want to be the only ones who access this knowledge. The same who have been looking for this knowledge for decades, the same group of people, the same
for
institution.
centuries.
Yes, for centuries. So
Yeah.
that makes sense that as soon as it's been spotted that the undergrounds are going somewhere under the Tomb of the Birds, under the Sphinx, or even now the Khafre Pyramid, the authorities straight away will stand up to it and say, no, it's bullshit and there's nothing and you're not going anywhere anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which leads us to, you know what, recently there has been some discoveries made by ground penetrating radar from satellite. So no need for authorizations.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to block anything. And you have been, you're not part of that team, but you have been, you've become spokesperson for them regarding social media and getting the information out. So now, do you want to tell us about who these people are and what has been going on, please?
Yes. This is the very exciting part because yeah, even setting it up more is, we're saying that NC2 could be leading over to this new stuff. And from Bill scans that I had in the first series I did with Bill is called The Secret Underworld of Giza. That's a 3-part series about all the amazing projects he's done over the last 20 years. And then the newest one was Revealing NC2. That's the one about with Richard about the new evidence we're bringing forward from there. Um, and that one we just released 2 days before the Italian press conference because it is directly related, and we are saying that is very likely the entrance to this stuff under the Khafre Pyramid. And in the series with Bill, we had GPR scans. Actually, I can show you. I can show you the entrance to these things, the entrance to the new discoveries, and I can show you some of the images of the new Khafre project as we
Please
talk about
go
it.
ahead.
Um, so actually, let me just open all of these in a window and then I'll do a screen share. But essentially, this team, Corrado Malanga and Filippo Biondi, were they did a they did a paper in 2022 where they ended up explaining all of this stuff about the Great Pyramid. Um, they used this SAR scanning on the Great Pyramid, and this was after the Scan Pyramids team, which was an official sanctioned project by the ministry and Japanese universities, University of Cairo, and they were doing muon scanning, which is cosmic particles moving through the stone, trying to sense chambers, and other types of like thermal infrared type scanning methods, but they did not come up with very much at all. And these Italians in 2022, they gave us this report using this new technology that was an innovation from Filippo Biondi, where, like you say, no on-site access needed, no permits needed, and no, media censorship needed over it. They just released an independent report. Um, so I'm going to do a screen share and explain a
Yeah.
little bit about this stuff. Um, Let me see. Share. Okay. Whoops, sorry. All right, can you see
Yeah.
this?
Yes, we can. I can see it. Yes.
Okay. This is the three guys. So in 2022, this is Filippo Biondi. He's the guy who actually innovated this technology. This is Corrado Malanga, who's kind of this very he's a character. He has a lot of theories about Egypt, a lot of things he's been speaking about in the past years, books they've written. And these two were involved in this project in 2022. And then Armando May, he's been helping with this newer one as well. So this is the team of three who are now bringing forward this amazing stuff. This is just an image from their press conference, which happened on the 15th and 16th of March, just 2 weeks ago, about. And this is an image of the announcement of the press conference, the three of them, and that's when it happened. So the day this conference happened, they released this Khafre Project abstract report of what they were going to be presenting there. And this first part of it starts getting into um, the 2022 images, which I think I'm going to mess it up if I try and zoom in at all. But you've all seen this probably at this point. This is the images they released of the Great Pyramid, where they showed 20 additional structures within the Great Pyramid. If you see the entrance here, the subterranean chamber, the Grand Gallery here, and the King's Chamber right here, that's all we ever knew about before. And now we've got this tunnel, these two ramps like coming down off the back here, all these chambers under the north base edge, which I'm starting to hear some theories and rumors about what's in those, and I don't know if I'm ready to tell the world but there's some wild stuff potentially going on in some of these chambers. And the big one is this huge green one above the Grand Gallery. The Scan Pyramids team gave us very little information comparatively. These guys showed us 20 new structures within the pyramid that have never been sensed or detected before in any way. So when this came out, it was mind-blowing and everyone was talking about it all, on social media, like all my friends who research the halls of records, we were all freaking out over this. This was the greatest discovery in the history of Egypt. This was a peer-reviewed paper. It's a very thorough paper they wrote. Um, and yeah, I'll just click here. You can see it's called Synthetic Aperture Radar Doppler Tomography Reveals Details of Undisclosed High Resolution Internal Structure of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And this is the book they wrote about it too, Biondi and Malanga together. which goes even deeper, but it's not sadly translated into English yet, but will be soon. So this paper is mind-blowing. They show everything and go into detail about how they made the scans, how they made the models based on the scans, all of that, all their mathematic formulas, how they developed the technology. Um, and so they give a quick overview in this short abstract of their 2022 project, and then they begin presenting what they brought out this year. And so when they released this report, I was on it in a second and I was already emailing them. I was trying to get in touch. I was like, this and that. Basically, you can see in episode 3 of the Secret Underworld series, Bill Brown and I have been working on revealing this temple complex that's completely buried underground. Basically, if you are looking at this view of the pyramid, this gray tunnel right here across the middle, it goes way over this way. And so it goes way off to off the east end of the plateau to this temple complex that's underneath the Khufu Causeway or the Great Pyramid Causeway. And the causeway itself goes straight on into the village where all these houses are. So Bill had been realizing that there's this whole complex underground there that nobody knows about, and it's got the tunnel that literally leads straight to these. It's this tunnel right here, basically continues onward all the way out the village. So, I'm trying to get in touch with these guys. Bill is showing me these images of the model of this temple based on eyewitness accounts because we knew the guy who excavated in his own basement and found it and saw it. And he's giving us descriptions that Bill built a model based on, as well as other resources. He's been there in the village, he knows everyone, and has been researching it. So I wrote to him and I was like, guys, I think we might have actually found the entrance to these chambers you guys found in the Great Pyramid. And, we want to work together with you. We want to at least help you. We want to get your message out to the world. Because this as well was a story that the media did not touch. They were not sponsored by the Egyptian ministry, so mainstream media was not going to touch this story. They weren't going to admit or concede or anything. It was a no comment situation. So I'm getting in touch with them saying like, well, I want to help you guys. I think you're onto something, and I think we've got information that can help you. And we're trying to do an excavation there. We're trying to get a permit to actually access this temple that reaches these chambers in the Great Pyramid, and also this stable project that we believe connects directly to the Hall of Records under the Sphinx. So, and by the way, there's new news on that. I just got permission. I have to put this in here quick. I just got permission from Edgar Casey's ARE to release an image that validates what we said in Secret Underworld in a big way. Um, I'm going to put this into Secret Underworld of Giza Part 4, I think, soon, but this is from Edgar Casey's archives. This is from the projects with Hugh Lynn Casey and Zahi Hawass and Mark Lehner going back to the 70s. An image that is, I just won't say anything more, but I'm very excited to have just yesterday got official permission to use that image in my book and film. So that's very, very exciting coming soon. Anyway, Corrado told me and the whole team told me, just hold on your hat, Trevor. March 15th of next year, we're going to release some stuff that's going to make the world stop in its tracks. And I'm like, all right, sounds good, man. This sounds great. And when I did reach them, they said they were already aware of what I was doing with William and they were already, interested. They addressed it with appreciation and we're like, yeah, we appreciate what you're doing and we'll be in touch, but basically just give it a minute until March 15th because the world's about to see. So I started preparing for this back then and these were some of the first two scans they showed, which are scans of the interior of the Khafre pyramid, which again is the middle pyramid, G2 we call it. And they showed a couple structures here and then there's a third scan, and whoops, this is what they ended up showing. I have closer up images of that, but maybe I can just zoom in here. Okay, yeah. So, oh, these are going to be low resolution if I zoom in. But yeah, I'll show a closer up image in a second. But basically, you have these structures. These everybody's been seeing these images at this point. Everyone's probably seen these. Eight massive wells going straight down from the Khafre Pyramid, 648 meters to these two large cubic structures measuring 80 meters per side. So going down to these boxes that are basically two huge cubes. And if you look at, a football field, that's 100 yards. It's about 91 meters. These things are almost big enough to fit a football field in each, just to give an idea of context. And these are models that are based on the best of their understanding from the scans they actually did. And they have since released a 4-hour press conference going deep into that, explaining how they were able to get this innovation on the technology to actually do that. Um, and that to the best of what they can understand, that's what this is, that these eight huge round wells going down to these two huge cubes have some kind of a spiral going around them that appears to be potentially a walkway or staircase or something completely else. Maybe, there's only so much that they can actually say based on what they've seen so far, but this is their understanding of what it most likely looks like. I don't know if I don't know, these things could be coiled conductors, that could be gold, it could be Anunnaki gold, copper alloy, orichalcum, or some Atlantean, it could be part of this machinery of the pyramids. And I've been talking to Chris Dunn about this, who's kind of the man when it comes to the Giza power plant theory. He's had all these books he's published, how it relates to Tesla. Actually, here we go. This is his most recent Giza to Tesla connection, and Christopher Dunn is like top of that field of all of this. Thinking about how the pyramids might be actually power plants or harvesting energy from the planet, geothermal, chemical plant, any number of these ideas in some way, um, validating this idea that there is in some form they are radiating wirelessly energy, whether it's electricity or otherwise. But anyway, that's getting to speculation, which I'm fine doing as long as I'm making it clear it's speculation and we're just imagining what this could be. But um, to me, I think their scans are absolutely showing us something. If people want to debate about exactly how accurate it is, it doesn't really matter when you're talking about a 700-meter structure. You can see this uh, just yeah, I don't know. That first look, it seems to me to be some type of components within the machinery of the pyramid, or if these are exactly as they show it. And I have no reason to doubt the Italian team. Their last paper was very good in 2022, and they have confirmed with me that they're going to be releasing a paper about this, though it's probably not going to come out until around maybe late June or July. But what they've given us here so far is very interesting. I've got a few more illustrations here. This was one thing I saw on Twitter from Chris Ramsey. This was really interesting because he said a few weeks ago, a friend of mine has been having OBEs every week and shared his drawings depicting some of his journeys out of the body. One of them was from the Great Pyramid, and he told him Thoth took him under the pyramid and it has a massive library. This is the image. This guy sent an image of these tubes going down under the pyramid to two huge cubes before this stuff came out. So I found that was very interesting. You see these tubes going down. He's saying the Great Pyramid, but he might be talking about the Khafre Pyramid, or there might be the same thing under the Great Pyramid as well. So, oh, oh, you're muted.
When I went under the Giza Hall of Records, the Guardian showed me a tube actually that was generating energy.
Okay, let me see it closer, quick. Yeah,
You
yeah.
see? You see? Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to Oh, put in gallery view. Okay. So it showed me a tube like this, and I actually wrote uh, the frill cylinder generator in the Giza Hall of Record. Yeah, it's interesting. It makes me think about this, this thing. Oops.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
that brings
difficult
it to
mirroring.
I'm seeing it. Yeah. Um,
Interesting,
when we
right?
talk about the two-eye stone or the two-eye crystal is the Atlantean power source, which few people have ever known about or commented on, but it was this a way of either storing energy or generating energy or focusing energy. Could have been used as a weapon if they wanted, but it may have been it likely was the power source that was eventually misused by the negative Atlanteans that ended
Yes.
up going rogue and messing everything up and probably melting down this whole system that sank their island somehow. So this power source is so beyond any of the technology we have today, and it could do the same thing today, like we say, if it's not put in the hands of the right people.
When you look at in the that's a cut of a spaceship. That's the central core generator. You have a
Wow.
generator of energy that is a frill, the energy from the void, the etheric energy. It can have a coil around it, and the pyramidion on the top of it is always there to gather the energy. It's the transponder that is going to gather this energy and transpond it to different devices. So that's interesting as well. I didn't want to
Yeah.
cut your presentation, so if you want to go back into it, you haven't finished, please do.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, we ended up getting this very much what we would have expected, the ministry to respond with. I was saying they're either going to not comment at all whatsoever, or it would be something like this. And it was something like this because there was no way they could not comment at all. The entire world is going crazy over this. So
Oh, no.
basically Hawass came out and said, nobody, it's all nonsense, which is just his opinion, which I think is wrong. And then some information that was completely irrelevant because he's saying no radar devices have been used in the pyramid. All claims about the presence of columns are baseless, lack any evidence. There are no expeditions working at the pyramid, and nobody ever claimed there was. Nobody ever said anyone tried for that. And it's like, yeah, okay, thanks, but we didn't need permission. We never needed to ask for it. We did this, it was done all from satellite, not we, but they did. And so it's basically, it doesn't mean anything what he says, to be honest. It's partially irrelevant and it's partially a false opinion that it's just not real. So that's about what we would have expected them to say. Yeah, these are just some Chris Dunn's books. These are related, I think. And I told Chris, I was like, he came out with an official statement because so many people were asking him what he thinks about this, and he actually shouted me out in it and gave me credit in his like official statement about it. But he's been talking with me a lot about, we're pulling together a lot of people like Dan Winter. I'm telling him to look into who's also into studying this stuff. People like JJ Hertak has released some books about this, about the machinery and energy systems, different things. So, and anyway, this was another book that I just wanted to highlight, but I don't think we have time to get into that. But that's one people should read if they can. This is the official logo. Our friends in Italy, they're doing this for all mankind, and that's important to recognize. They are not in this for money. They're basically doing it for free. The company offering the satellite data, Umbra and Capella Space, they give that data out for free to everyone. And it's just Filippo developed this software that was able to use those SAR signals to actually do this. So they're doing this basically for free for everyone, and nobody can stop them. It's
Yes,
it's
that's it.
amazing. And so they're telling me like one of the things they told me for my film in the NC2 film, I reached out and I was like, I'm not going to ask you guys for any sneak peeks at any of these scans. I'm not going to do that to you, even though I would love it if you felt like, didn't even say that. But I said, could you just tell me one thing for my film about NC2? Can you tell me if you know anything about the areas to um, the northwest half of the plateau, or NC2 specifically? Is there anything you can tell me about how that connects into the greater system? And I can just paraphrase what he gave me. It's the very last shot of my film about it, the two-part film. Um, Armando said he referred to NC2 as a nerve center connecting into the whole system, like it's a
Wow.
nervous system, and this is
Wow.
one of the main nerves, which just fits completely with Henry Salt's description of these labyrinthine
Yeah.
passageways going off from there. Which, by the way, he also said that Caviglia had gone 300 feet down one of those passageways and didn't continue further than that. But so Armando tells me that he says it's a nerve center that connects into the whole thing, but then he says it's not the only one. And remember what I'm saying about this North Cliff. There's other doors down the back of it. This is where my mind went as well. And then he said, we're gonna spend the next year scanning the whole plateau. He said the city below is much larger than we thought.
Yes.
Whether it's a city, an interconnected network of chambers. I'm going to get to this final shot in a second that will show what he meant by that. But we're talking about not related to the Khafre Pyramid specifically, but underneath the whole plateau. They gave us one shot that goes 2 kilometers deep that I'll show in a second. But basically, this describes the entire state of the world at this moment where everyone's like, wait, the real scientists are all saying, well, we're waiting for more
Excellent.
data, basically. But then you have these naysayers somehow knowing that it's fake. They're claiming these actual scholars, university trained scientists, I don't know, claiming they just completely made this up out of CGI. It's like you can either you're challenging the fact that these are real scans entirely, or you're blinding yourself to the reality that the scans, even if the models aren't perfectly built from them necessarily, are there. They are showing these cubes. They are showing these artificial structures that are beyond the scope of any human being to comprehend of how this was made. There is no known civilization on the world that could build this kind of structure. And so it was a great meme, to be honest. This was how a lot of people felt, just being like, I want to see more. And the team did respond. They ended up giving us this image shortly after that are showing these huge tubes going down. And like I say, you can't necessarily pinpoint the spirals, but you can see why they're inferring
Oh,
there's
yeah, you
some,
can see it.
yeah, there's something like that going on. And yeah, I don't know if it's absolutely perfect, these models they built, but they're very clearly built on reasonable grounds based on these scans. Unless you're going to tell me that you think that these scholars and scientists actually just made this up on, some 3D design program or AI, unless you're accusing of being complete frauds, you have to acknowledge these are real scans. People are like, SAR technology can't go that deep, but they don't understand that there has been an innovation on the technology that has allowed it. So even the pyramid itself, you know, they are showing multiple angles of these structures that they believe there are 5 of these Z structures, they call them, which look like the King's Chamber, the Great Pyramid, with these relieving chambers above and arched roof. And yeah, some of that could be, challenged at some point in terms of exactly how accurate their depictions are. But unless you're going to call them completely fraud and making it up from scratch, you've got nothing to say. They're showing the scans, and way more of them came out in the 4-hour press conference when it was released, which is available on YouTube now. I would ask you to probably share the link to that in the description of this video so people can
Of
see.
course.
Um,
Of course.
but yeah, they are coming out with this paper by, like I said, June or July probably. That's going to be just as thorough as their one in 2022. So the next image I can tell what's coming up here is actually this is what I'm talking about, what Bill was doing back in 2006, which he did with the NRIAG and also with the Polish University of Wrocław and Adam Sienkiewicz. So this Polish team ended up scanning the same 9 locations as he scanned basically the same year as the NRIAG and Dr. Abbas. And one of the scans they did was the entire east base edge of G2, the Khafre Pyramid. So not only did we have the NC2 cave connecting into the western side of that pyramid and very likely being an entrance to all these chambers we're seeing, but we also have this. That's the entrance from the east. This is right on the eastern base edge of that pyramid. And
Mm.
that is a void
Yeah.
that is 99% sure to be the entrance into all these new structures.
Yeah.
And this one I believe was the Polish teams, Adam Sienkiewicz and if I'm saying that right. But yeah, we have the same scans. I have several more like this showing the actual entrance into this stuff. This is coming in basically from the Sphinx Causeway under that pyramid. So
Wow.
this is why, the Italians they were recognizing that Bill had really done good work too, and why I'm reaching out to them being like, you guys are finding these whatever they are, and we're finding the entrances to them. And we do want to support you guys and help get your message out and also show that we are finding the same stuff. And now they also have a official YouTube official they have an official YouTube page. It's Nicole Chicolo Expedition, it's called, which is Nicole, and then it's Ciccolo. And her channel's called Expedition. She's the official outlet to the media for the team. Um, and they also put up a Facebook page where now they're sharing a lot of these images that actually came from the press conference. So you're seeing like that's a cube. They're not making this up. They're
That's a
not
cute.
inventing it out of nothing.
No.
Um, Here they did a proof of the method where I just done an interview with Johanna James, who's got this channel. She's just always like interested in all this stuff. And she was one of the first people to discover that I was actually the source of this because well, I guess I didn't mention that, but on the 15th, when they held the press conference, they gave me this abstract and said I could release it to the world. So I did on my Facebook page, just screenshots of it because that's the only thing I could do to release it. I couldn't put up the PDF or anything. So I just put it out and I thought that everyone at the conference, there was 900 plus attendees who sold it out within like hours of it being announced. I thought they were all going to get it and everyone's going to be releasing this, but it turned out to be just me, I guess, because they trusted me or they wanted to shine a spotlight on some of my work too, maybe, or I still haven't quite gotten to the bottom of it. And I'm not trying to, hound them down with all these questions and things, but I, I'll say that it's very exciting. Well, I'll get to this in a second, actually. What they're showing here in one of the images they released in the press conference and on their Facebook page is the control. And I said this in my interview with Johanna James. I said, they could just do a proof of the method by scanning the Osiris shaft, for instance, which is the structure underground underneath the Sphinx Causeway between the Sphinx and the Middle Pyramid.
Mhm.
And 2 days later, they came out with a press conference and they showed the Osiris shaft. Just like I said, would be a perfect a way to prove the method, which
Yeah.
they did in 2022. They have to show that they can see the structures that are below ground in order to prove that they are able to scan them and they are accurate. We got to see chambers that we already know exist. So this is showing the 3 levels of the Osiris shaft right here. And then it's showing the fourth level and whatever these other levels are, all the
Yeah.
way down to this, which is very mysterious. What is all the way deep down here? And this is another thing, just to be, humbly say, we predicted that too. We predicted the fourth level of the Osiris Chef would be discovered because we know these things. Um, we have friends who have done a lot of work on the Osiris Chef. We've been very interested in it ourselves because we know it connects to all this other stuff. So this is another great image to show. They did do the proof of the method, and we were right. There is a fourth and more levels of the Osiris shaft going into this deeper network. And all of this, it goes back to Professor Salim Hassan in the 1930s, who was down there, doing all of these excavations. You wrote about him in your book too. When these reporters started coming out and they were saying, all of this is there's a secret city below the plateau. This is 100 years ago. They were already saying that. They were using that term, and because there were
Oh, yeah.
so many passages and chambers full of, reliefs and all that stuff. Um, so yeah, it's going back to then. It's not a new idea really, but yeah, there's just a few more of these that are on their Facebook page. This is showing the existing Belzoni chamber. These are a couple closer images that give you an idea. This is really just showing that they're separating. This is one image at the bottom of the tubes, and this is one image at the top, but they're actually way longer than this. So they're just showing you it's two separate parts of it without, making it super long.
Yeah.
Um, because I think there's an image somewhere here. This is someone's diagram of how long it would actually be, supposedly. This one's a lot longer than some of the images that supposedly worked it out, but it's an enormous structure for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is kind of getting to the very interesting stuff because this was the image they showed at the very end of the abstract. And this is what they are telling us. This is the Khafre Pyramid, and right below the Khafre Pyramid is this dark vertical band coming down. And what you're seeing is this is about, I believe it's like this is about 1.2 kilometers down underground, and this is about 2 kilometers. So we're talking, 1,200 meters to 2,000 meters. We're seeing this entire mess of just what they called artificial structures and what they
Yeah.
said might be an ancient city two
Yeah.
kilometers below, 1 to 2 kilometers below. And so this is the one that really caused a stir. And people were like, nobody can scan 2 kilometers. And I'm like, nobody except Filippo Biondi. Figure it out, y'all. He is doing something new. And so everyone's questioning the method, and I'm sending them all to Manu Seyfzadeh because he is a genius. He's brilliant. He's the person I go to when I have a question about Egypt at all. But he's also been obsessively analyzing Filippo's new, what we're calling it the Biondi protocol. And that could be a science fiction film someday, it sounds like. But this is the innovation that he specifically brought to it to allow to scan a full 2 kilometers down. So this, they tell us, is a actual tomographic cross section. It's like someone took a knife and sliced the cake, and we're seeing one slice through the entire plateau. And this is actually going down to 2 kilometers, they're saying. So they're not making that up, and we are seeing something at that level. Is this a natural caves or something? I don't know. That's part of the conversation we could have, but we're not seeing nothing down
Yeah.
here,
Yeah. Yeah.
Is
What
it in?
intrigues me is that this hollow, uh, long tube, it's the same color as what's underneath. It's hollowed as well. It's like we are reaching, it's like the inner earth structures where
You
suddenly
mean
you have
this
big voids.
this column?
Yeah. And underneath you have this dark blue, the same, like if it was
Uh,
a void,
yeah,
It's very interesting. Very interesting. So,
yeah.
but these structures have been, regarding my sources, already there from the time of when the Anahim or the Anunnaki colonized Egypt and started the Zep-Tepi period. And they built all these structures. And when the Atlantean civilization, way much later, started to collapse, they sent envoys there to hide technologies in these already existent structures. So that is can go back very, very, very old, very ancient.
Yeah, I think it really forces us to, I mean, when you're seeing structures this size, um, you have to throw out the entire story of what we know. There's
Yeah,
no known
yeah,
civilization that could do this in terms of just human. It's more so than any photograph of a UFO or video of a UFO. People aren't can't believe any of that anymore because I mean, you called in a fleet of UFOs and a TR-3B, and they
yeah,
showed up when you said they would. And how many
yeah.
people have even acknowledged that? In the age of AI, you cannot trust videos, nothing you can believe. If it's too clear of a shot, then it's fake. If it's too blurry of a shot, then it's fake.
Yeah, but there were 1,000 eyewitnesses, 1,000
Yeah,
people who have testified. So,
yeah.
you can't fake that.
Yeah, I think that's some of the most compelling UFO footage I've ever seen because, and I wish I made it to year three. I was at year one and two of the conference, but seeing that happen, I'm like telling people, I'm like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. Elena Denon said that her ET friends were going to show up with the whole fleet, and they did in front of 1,000 people. To me, that is beyond compelling compared to any of these, even the DC flyover event, back in the 50s, or as far as mass sightings of multiple witnesses, it's beyond anything the world has ever seen. So thank you for that, by the way. But like I say, it's just, people are realizing at this point with AI that any image could be fooling them. And what would it really take to show people that there is something bigger than just humanity here or just the civilizations we know of in our history? Which one of those past civilizations built this?
Yes,
You know? How
yes,
can you fake when you're seeing an actual device or machine or structure that's 700 meters deep into the earth? I'll tell you, one of the things it actually brings to mind for me are the cenotes of Mexico. The
yes.
cenotes are these massive round holes that just go straight down into the earth. I mean, I've swam in some of them where it's like you go swimming, it's the most crystal clear blue water you've ever seen in your life. But they go down, I mean, some of them like the water level is like 100 feet below the surface of the ground. And then they're like two, three, four, 500 feet deep of water below that. And it's like makes me think of like the Ridley Scott movies, Aliens or something, where they're in Antarctica and the beam from space just drills through the ice like this giant tube. Or
Yeah.
how else are you gonna make things of this magnitude, this structures of this
Yes.
size?
This was made with advanced technology. There there are technologies that are able to melt rock and vitrify it. That's
Mhm.
that's been known, and that's how the underground tunnels all over the earth have been dug by extraterrestrials, but also extraterrestrials who have given these technologies to humans. But that was dug by um, off-world technology. That is for sure, and
That's what
very
I would,
ancient.
yeah. I mean, that's where my first thought has to go, in terms of just trying to wrap my head around. It's like it was not created by chisels. It was not
No.
carved out with chisels, this kind of
You
thing.
d- you
Um,
don't carve perfect shaft to 2 kilometers in the rock, you know, uh,
yeah. And I
plateau
don't,
by hand, with a chisel, like you die from it. That's part
yeah.
one. Or it takes
And
you like a million years to do one by
yeah,
hand. No, I mean,
impossible. You can't even begin
impossible.
to claim that it could have been done that or with
No.
pounding stones or just smashing them with something else. No, no.
I tell you,
Uh,
36,000 years ago, all this work started, to my sources.
mhm. That seems to make sense to me. If you even look at John West, he was referencing the Palermo stone and the Turin papyrus and some of these kings lists of Egypt.
Yeah.
The kings lists they give themselves, depending on your mode of calculating how long each reign was, they do put it back to really way before dynastic Egypt. They go back to 36,000 years in that range at least of
Yes, and it
Egypt
co
being occupied
it
and
corres it corresponds to the Sumerian king list as well. Same time.
yeah. Yeah, and some of this stuff with bringing forward. their knowledge of precession, the precessional cycle. Like I was saying in that book, the origin map, for instance, or the Giza prophecy. We know that Giza is a precessional clock. It does show the two extremes. For instance, in that scenario, it's the Queen's pyramids, they call them, the three satellites on either side. There's one lined up over here by the Great Pyramid, the three satellite pyramids. And then over by Menkaure, there's another one that's 90 degrees different. And these are representing the positions of Orion's belt, just like the three main pyramids that are on a diagonal between. But this side, over by the Great Pyramid, aligns in the age of Leo, which was 12,500 BC.
Mhm.
And this one over here aligns today in Aquarius, the dawn of Aquarius. So you have those two sets of three satellite pyramids that align 13,000 years apart. And that's part of the design of Giza.
Yeah.
And that takes several precessional cycles to know when they're going to be where. So, in that alone, you have absolute proof that whoever built Giza, whenever they built it, they already probably had at least 50,000 years of stellar records in order to make an accurate prediction. Two full cycles, I'm going to say it would take to make a calendar of that sort. And this book by Thomas Brophy, it shows the exact same thing at Nabta Playa in the south of Egypt. It actually shows there, it's using the same constellation, it's using Orion there. And I can't get into exactly how he proves this, but he's an astrophysicist, Dr. Thomas Brophy. He proves that these megaliths are actually demonstrating I'm just going to close this here. It's demonstrating I'll tell you a few things of what it shows. There's like a stone that you're looking out from, and it goes to these different sight lines on the horizon, which also pinpoint these six stars, the three of Orion's belt and the three of his head and shoulders. And it sends sight lines to each point on the horizon for each specific star of its heliacal rising date when it rises with the sun, which happens one time in the entire precessional cycle, and it's considered the birth of that star. So it's pinpointing six different times within a 26,000 year cycle of when these stars are born. And then it shows because of the distance from the viewing stone to these stones in the desert, megaliths just dropped in place. It's showing the relative distance to each one of those stars from Earth by showing that distance from the viewing stone to these stones. It's showing the orbital velocity of each one of these stones, of each one of these stars, how fast they're moving away or from us. It's showing potentially with small megaliths around these ones placed there, possibly actual planetary bodies for each one of those systems, which is something that NASA cannot even see. Maybe now with James Webb they can get that, but it's beyond NASA's information about those stars.
And it
It's
was
showing,
way before.
yes, the last time, for instance, the head and shoulders of the main calendar circle there aligned was 16,500 BC. And again, it's showing these two extreme tilts of the precessional cycle. So if they placed these stones at Nabta Playa when they aligned, they would have had to place one set of three and then wait 13,000 years to place the next set. So people need to wrap their heads around that.
Yes.
Beyond that, there are stones even buried in the ground that are physical representations and models of our Milky Way galaxy. And next to it, the Andromeda galaxy. And it's a literal model of the entire universe built at this site. And the fine structure constant of the universe, the highest math and physics you could imagine are encoded into this circle that must be several cycles old. It must be 100,000 years old. I mean, to get this much, to get that accurately to predict the precessional cycle, you have to have multiple times through it. And this is what Edgar Cayce said. These Atlanteans were bringing knowledge of the stars to Egypt. And if you deny that, if you deny it all, last thing I'll say is if they didn't have 50 to 100,000 years of stellar records to work with, they would have needed a laptop computer with like Stellarium or the programs that can actually process the sky back thousands of years. So did they have a laptop to use in order to make these sites, or did they have 50 to 100,000 years of star movements recorded from that location? I'll just put it on that note for a minute. Let people think about that and
Yes,
can go
yes,
read the
that's it.
origin map. Anyone who's interested in that.
Yeah, that's it. When you have all the information, you just it's very quick to set up in place.
Yeah,
Clues, you know, and mathematics is the best way to hide knowledge, to encode it in mathematics.
yeah,
When you don't have a clue what it is about, you will not see it. But when you
yeah,
know what you're looking for, you see everything suddenly. You see all the elements of the equation. And the best way to encode these elements, it's in stone that
yes.
goes through all the eras
That's
of time.
such an important fact. And now I want to say a couple last things before I know you're probably wrapping up here. Is it
Yeah, yeah, but go
okay?
on.
Just a couple more things that are really important because of what you just said and
Mhm.
so true. Like I say, photographs, video, even that can't be believed. People are questioning everything with AI and stuff. The math can't lie. The positioning of these megaliths cannot lie. They told us the distance to those star systems. They told us the planetary bodies of the star system. They told us in the Great Pyramid, in the Giza Plateau. This is, I have to mention, over the last 3 days, my mind has been blown so I can't even describe some of this stuff that the level of knowledge that is encrypted into the dimensions of the pyramids themselves, into the entire layout of the plateau. I'm working with Gary Osborne and Ed Nightingale, and these two guys both have had no ego, no ambitions of like money or any. They have been nose to the work for 30 years each, and they're both telling me their lifelong masterworks decrypting the advanced mathematics and geometry of the Giza Plateau. And it's like you say, you can't argue the math. We're going to drop this out on the public. They're both telling me the same stuff. I mean, Gary and I have been talking a long time. Ed, I've had his book, The Giza Template, for a long time. I know John Anthony West told me this guy's one of the guys who's on it. They're following these same numbers, the precessional numbers, the 432, 864, all these harmonic numbers. And this entire sacred science that is built off of this math and geometry, they're showing me the same things from both sides. You know, that they use the meter, they use the foot, they use the cubit, they use seconds, hours, minutes, days. They used all of these units and they do all have geometric relationships to each other and they are all extracted from knowledge of the planet. They're encoding the obliquity of the Earth's axis at 23.5 degrees roughly in the pyramid. Obviously Pythagorean theorem, pi and phi, that's the kindergarten level stuff that's in the pyramids that Egyptologists are still denying. But looking back to Peter Tompkins and the Secrets of the Great Pyramid or R.A. Schwally de Lubic's, this stuff was known long ago. And I have to just give a mention to that because we recorded 10 hours yesterday between the two of them. They're both telling me the same things. And I'm like, all right, guys, we're going to do a think tank, and this is going to probably blow the minds of everyone on Earth because this is very, very advanced knowledge. It's beyond anything that we have in the world today. And I wanted to mention that there's just one last thing I want to say before wrapping it up here is also that that's going to be coming on my channel soon, and some other stuff is on my channel soon now if you want to check it out. But the big news, it's very, very exciting, is that I've basically been talking to Armando May about the idea of at least doing a video chat with him to catch up on what's going on and actually really getting on the same page with them. But it's sounding like they're going to let me record an interview in English with Armando and possibly Filippo as well. They're yeah, I'm gonna try and give them some questions ahead of time so they can make sure they're more Italian speakers, but they're basically saying they're willing to give an English interview with me on the 12th that I'll be able to record and release. It sounds like at the very least I'll be able to catch up with them privately, but it's sounding like they're open to the idea of me recording and releasing it. So I'm gonna say if anybody wants to give questions to the team to have me ask them, send them to me on Facebook or something. I'll make a post about this. So if anyone wants to ask Armando or possibly Filippo some of these questions, they can give the questions to me, and I'm gonna sort through, choose which are the best, and give them to them ahead of time so they're more prepared to answer in English. And that's very, very exciting because they have not released any English interviews whatsoever. So I think yeah, I know we're getting to we can wrap it up there, basically.
Yeah. Oh, well, listen, everything is in the description of this video. By the time we put this video out, you give me all the links and where people will have to contact you if they want to ask questions to Armando May and the team, and all the necessary links to your channel, to your work.
Yeah.
Everything is down under there, this video. You click on more and you have all the links.
Mhm.
And Trevor, it's like we've been rushing through so much, and we need to expand every
Mhm.
every little topics
Yeah.
here. So we'll do I'll welcome you more on my channel because I love chatting with you about these things and exchanging
Yeah.
experience and opinions and
Absolutely. I would love to get more
yes.
into talking about some of your experiences in Egypt and that stuff as well. So I'm glad
Yeah.
we got a first just cover some of the stuff that most people need right now. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been yeah, I know we've been trying for so long, but we've both been so busy and it's really great to finally get it to happen.
No, I know. Sometimes at one point, let's do it.
Yeah. Yeah, even today. I mean, I know I postponed this twice already since the
I
15th because I've literally had like about one full night's sleep since the 15th collectively.
I can't believe that.
I can barely eat or sleep. I'm going doing interviews and my eyes are like black, like look like I haven't
Oh,
they look like I'm a
no.
drug addict or something because I'm like yeah, and
He's
I'm
not.
like
I can obviously not.
I'm just
Well,
totally
you have an
sleep
addiction
deprived.
is the mysteries of Egypt.
Yes.
That's
That
your
is it. And it
addiction.
wouldn't let me sleep. People are sending me so many messages. I'm just like, I want, comments and stuff. I want to stay accessible to people and really make sure I can help as much as I can to cut out all this confusion and all this misinformation. So I haven't been sleeping, but it's okay.
Thank you. Thank you for being the bridge in this crucial and fascinating topic. So bridging people
Yeah.
and information. So Trevor, thank you very much.
Yeah,
And
thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, hopefully we'll do more in the future.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And everybody fasten their seatbelt for more and engage.
Engage.
Thank you, Trevor.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.